You have done something in a group that you would never do alone. Maybe you booed someone. Maybe you laughed at a joke that wasn't funny. Maybe you stayed silent while something happened right in front of you. You told yourself it wasn't really you. But what if that's exactly backwards? What if the crowd doesn't hide who you are? What if it reveals who you've always had the capacity to be? Your brain is not one fixed person. It is a switchboard of identities, and the people around you decide which one gets picked up. Alone, you are a son, a friend, a coworker. In a group, you can become a fan, a rioter, a hero, a bystander, all in the same afternoon, all without changing a single thing about your character. This is not a flaw in you. It is a feature of how human minds were built to survive in groups long before cities, before laws, before anyone wrote down what was right and wrong. In 1971, a psychologist named Philip Zimbardo wanted to find out how far this could go. He took ordinary college students, men with no criminal history, no signs of cruelty, and split them into guards and prisoners inside a fake basement jail at Stanford University. Within days, the guards were humiliating the prisoners. Some prisoners broke down emotionally. The experiment was supposed to run for 2 weeks. It was shut down after 6 days because it had spiraled out of control. Zimbardo's conclusion shook the field of psychology. He argued that the situation itself, the uniform, the role, the anonymity, had overpowered the individual personalities underneath. Good people, placed in a bad system, became something else. Not because they were secretly bad all along, but because the structure gave them permission. For decades, that was the story everyone told. Strip away your name, put on a uniform, lose yourself in a crowd, and your moral brakes simply fail. Scientists called this de-individuation. The idea was simple and a little terrifying. Anonymity equals danger. The more invisible you feel, the less responsible you act. But here's the part most retellings of this story leave out. Around the same era, another psychologist, Stanley Milgram, ran a different kind of experiment. He told ordinary volunteers they were helping with a memory study. Their real task was to deliver what they believed were increasingly painful electric shocks to another person. Just because a man in a lab coat told them to continue, most of them kept going. Far past the point most people predicted anyone would stop. Milgram's shocking discovery wasn't that people are secretly cruel. It was that ordinary people will override their own conscience when a perceived authority takes responsibility for the outcome. You don't need a crowd for this to happen. You barely even need other people. You just need someone else willing to hold the blame so you don't have to. So which is it? Does the crowd erase you, or does it just shift where you put the weight of your own choices? This is where the story gets stranger, and far more interesting than either experiment alone suggested. Decades later, 2 researchers named Steve Riker and Alex Haslam went back to the Stanford basement, this time with cameras, ethics oversight, and a very different question. They restaged a version of the prison study for the BBC and tracked what actually happened moment by moment, not just the dramatic ending. What they found challenged Zimbardo's entire explanation. The guards in their study did not slide into cruelty just because they were anonymous or in costume. Some guards felt the role deeply uncomfortable and refused to lean into it. The prisoners, on the other hand, began to bond together, and over time, some of them started acting more aggressively than the guards. Riker and Haslam proposed something called social identity theory as a better explanation than simple de-individuation. You don't lose your identity in a group. You trade your personal identity for a group identity. And whichever identity feels strongest in that moment decides how you behave. If you feel like an individual being watched and judged, you act one way. If you feel like a member of the guards, or the team, or the protest, or the crowd, your sense of right and wrong recalibrates to match what that group expects of its members. You are not becoming no one. You are becoming whoever the people around you are unconsciously asking you to be. Think about the last time you were at a concert, or a stadium, or even just a group chat that turned cruel towards someone outside it. Did you feel less like yourself? Or did you feel like a more concentrated version of one particular piece of yourself? The part that wanted to belong. The part that didn't want to be the one person who broke the rhythm of the group. This wiring is ancient. For most of human history, survival depended on group cohesion far more than individual judgment. A person who broke from the tribe's signals, who hesitated when everyone else moved, who questioned the group's direction in a moment of danger, often did not survive long enough to pass that hesitation on. Evolution rewarded fast alignment with the group's emotional state. It punished standing apart. That instinct never left you. It is still running in the background every time you walk into a room and instantly, without thinking, start reading what tone everyone else has already agreed to. This is also why anonymity online feels so different from anonymity in person. On the internet, you often have both at once, no face and a visible vocal group already agreeing on how to feel about something. Your ancient identity-switching machinery sees an established group tone and your individual hesitation. The part of you that might pause and ask whether this is fair gets quietly outvoted before you even notice it happening. So what actually protects someone from becoming an unrecognizable version of themselves in a group? Riker and Haslam's research points to something specific. It's not personal willpower in some abstract sense. It's whether a person holds on to a competing identity strong enough to compete with the group's pull. The guards who refuse to escalate often describe thinking of themselves first as students or as fundamentally fair people, an identity they refuse to let the guard role override. The strength of that competing identity, not raw moral character, predicted who resisted and who didn't, which means the question was never really, are you a good person or a bad one? Every person studied in these experiments was, by any normal measure, an ordinary, decent individual before they walked into the room. The real question is which identity is loudest in your head in the moment that matters. Is it the version of you that exists only inside this group, this chat, this crowd, this uniform? Or is it the steadier, slower version of you that existed before you walked in and will still be there after you walk out? You won't always get to choose your environment. You will keep walking into rooms, teams, crowds, and online spaces that quietly hand you a new identity to try on. But you can choose in the half second before you act which version of yourself answers first. Not because the crowd is something to fear, but because it was never erasing you in the first place. It was only ever asking you which version of you was going to show up.